The gentleman's outrage, I think, is a bipartisan reflection of the entire first round. I'll be brief in the second round. There are a few things that weren't covered, so I recognize myself. Mr. Miller, Exhibit 2, a letter we have from Susan Britta that, although she was the original, if you will, provocateur that caused your investigation to begin, she writes, or actually, Ruth Cox, there's a question, wanted to know why the report had to be made public since she was told otherwise by Bob Peck. Are you familiar with this exhibit?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
And I appreciate your completeness in supplying us this. How do you explain anybody, political appointee or not, considering that any part of this would be retained as private, particularly after such a long time of us not knowing about it?
I can't explain that, Mr. Chairman. We always intended for this to be public. It is of such a magnitude and of such an outrage that it had to be made public for transparency.
Well, I'd like to follow up on that because the ranking member and I regularly receive briefings from IGs. IGs, all 12,000 men and women and $2 billion budget, exist to a great extent for a liaison with this branch. I'm more than a little concerned. You've done a wonderful job. It's a comprehensive report, and it's going to change a lot of things throughout government. But if you had to do it again, when would you have briefed this committee, your primary committee for oversight?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we wanted to nail down all the facts every which way before we put the report to print. I'm receiving your message that we should come to you sooner, much sooner than we have a draft report. The process was that we wanted to get something together quickly to warn the Administrator and others so that they can stop further waste. We did that quickly and did it in May 2011. It took a long time to nail down the facts every possible way, and we got a final report to her in February. She requested an extension of an extra 30 days. I'm happy to talk with you about when we should bring these reports to you. These are sensitive reports. They do contain what we view as criminal conduct.
Well, and I appreciate the criminal conduct, and obviously one of the concerns we have is we need to know from a reform standpoint, from an oversight standpoint, earlier, not later. I'll say this on the record to you, but in fact to all the IGs, the 70+ and all the people that work for them. It's my intention to work with the ranking member to produce a guidance letter from this committee that would spell out an expectation. If that expectation, which is ordinary, we're going to try and be consistent with what often occurs. If that is not something that we see on a go-forward basis, then I will also draft legislation with the ranking member to try to codify in law. It has not been a problem in the past. I do find it exceptional. And by the way, good work. I'm not making any disparaging remark on the quality of your work. But it is highly unusual for us not to receive a heads-up much sooner, particularly when it would have allowed us, for example, the 23 letters I sent to other agencies, to begin looking at perhaps the effects of so much money being infused into the government. As you know, Earl Devaney and I worked closely. We were monitoring, through the stimulus funding, a plethora of possible areas in which so much money could in fact be misspent. And former IG Devaney, Chairman Devaney, and this committee worked constantly on this along with the Vice President. So while we were doing all of that, this would have been helpful. That's the only criticism. I'm going to close here with Mr. Robertson. You were previously the liaison to essentially the White House, and I know the word administration versus White House versus President gets used loosely. So let's just take the largest question. In your role as, in fact, the communicator, not representing the Administrator, but representing White House liaison, that role in which your job was to communicate, to have no surprises, nothing unknown to the people of the White House, both political and non-political. Wouldn't you ordinarily have reported something like this in that role?
The role of the White House liaison is to onboard appointees into different offices in the executive branch agencies and departments.
No, but here's the whole point. When you worked for Senator Obama, I'm sure your Chief of Staff told you no surprises for the Senator, right?
I don't remember having that conversation in the Senate.
So you would have kept something like this that could embarrass the President? You would have kept it a secret when he was your boss as a Senator? Or would you have told the Chief of Staff then?
I don't know how to answer a hypothetical question.
Well, no, this is not all that hypothetical. All of us on the dais, in fact, we have the same situation that Senator Obama has. So this is not something that's unusual. When you work for a member of Congress, it is almost a given that the one thing you don't do is let somebody be surprised with the scandal that occurs under their watch. Now, I'm going to ask you, because you still have your job. You're still a political appointee at the highest level. And as Ms. Johnson says, you're probably making less than the $179,000 that Mr. Neely is still making today. So I ask you again, during the time that you were White House liaison, wouldn't there be an expectation that you would inform people at the White House?
During my time as White House liaison, I executed the duties assigned to me by my boss, the acting administrator at the time.
So the word liaison doesn't mean anything?
It means that the primary duty of the White House liaison is to onboard appointees into the executive branch agencies and departments.
So you're telling me that the Obama administration doesn't use White House liaisons to communicate back and forth to keep the White House staff informed about things that heads up that may be significant?
My role as White House liaison was to onboard the appointees into the executive branch agencies, my branch agency.
When did you first become aware of this scandal?
I had secondhand knowledge in May following the briefing that the IG gave to the administrator. It was mentioned to me that this was an ongoing investigation that existed.
Since May of last year, more than a year, or approximately a year, have you talked to anyone in the administration outside of GSA that may have communicated it to anyone inside the White House or related areas?
Do you mind repeating the question? I'm not.
It's a fairly broad question. Did you, once you knew this terrible scandal, this waste, did you talk to any of your friends, associates, or other people employed either by the Office of the President or related areas within the administration? Did you communicate this to any of your sort of friends and family?
I communicated to the appropriate people.
Who are they?
Who are the appropriate people? In my ongoing work as Chief of Staff to the Administrator inside GSA, I occasionally and sometimes on a regular basis communicate to the White House about the policy priorities inside GSA, as well as any issues within the agency that might impact administration priorities.
To the best of your recollection, when did you first report this scandal to those people?
To the best of my recollection, the first mention I made of the ongoing investigation by Brian, which I was not assigned. It's important to note that the administrator directly assigned the deputy administrator and the senior counselor to both the relationship with the IG as well as this specific investigation. And after becoming aware of the existence of the investigation, I mentioned it to a White House staffer that I worked with on a regular basis, among other things that I communicated to them about what was going on inside GSA.
That was a pretty good answer, but the word "when" was in my question.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. That was sometime shortly after the May 2011 timeframe when I became aware that the IG had briefed Administrator Johnson.
Okay. So you hear about it in May. You reported promptly to a staff person within the White House.
I would say it was sometime after May, in the next several weeks.
Within a few weeks?
Yes.
Who was that staff person?
It was a member of the White House counsel's office that I work with on a regular basis as far as GSA issues go.
I said who?
It was a lawyer in the White House counsel's office.
What's the name?
Her name was Kim Harris.
Kim Harris?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.